graduate school together, and so I'm going to follow up on being curmudgeonly, which Sam started. So the first two speakers talked about exemplary models, and they are exemplary models, but what runs through it is a foundation's generosity and willingness to support the program, and then the foundation pulling the plug. And as I look over what I've tried to do in the postdoctoral area, it's very much the same story. And it reminds me, I know we've got people here from the firms that do random experiments, how hard it is to replicate model programs. And in fact, what runs through a lot of these programs is somebody at the foundation who pushed the program. Then when that person moved on, whoever took it over went away. So I can afford to be critical of foundations since I'm never going to have to write an agreement. I'm going to move to the Russell Sage Foundation. So I've been thinking about foundations. The other thing is most faculty don't care. Most deans don't care. Most department chairs don't care. So I think that's we've met the enemy and it's us. My interest in postdoctoral training goes back to a personal anecdote. I guess this is a case study model. I wasn't the best and the brightest in graduate school and found myself in a postdoctoral program at the Institute for Research on Poverty. IRP during a period from about 1970 to 1980, at which time the Reagan administration pulled the plug on large funding for poverty research, had 3 or 4 postdocs per year, and like the pipeline programs, has many people in the field who were trained as postdocs at Wisconsin. And the other thing, as I thought back, I don't think there was any racial or ethnic diversity in postdocs at Wisconsin at the time. I don't think it was on their radar screen. So I unlike when I was at MIT, the MIT economics department, starting in the late 60s and early 70s, made increasing participation by racial and ethnic minorities. Prior to the IRP didn't. But what the IRP did was have a model mentoring program, not the kind of postdoc that many fields follow, in which you will come to my lab and you will do what I say, sort of the glorified research assistant kind of postdoc. But it was, we've got all these resources. It turns out, I was talking to Gordon Berlin, president of MDRC, and in constant dollars, when MDRC was started in the 70s to run the supported work experiment, it was about a $300 million project. So again, one of the reasons IRP could have this generous postdoc program, because at the time there was a lot more money for social research in general. And so this was a program in which postdocs were mentored by senior scholars. They were offered, do you want to work on this project? But you can keep working on your own research. And so that model certainly shaped my career. The ones I can think of today, and probably the foundation that stands out, is the Robert Wood Johnson Health and Society program and the Robert Wood Johnson Health Policy Scholars, which operate like that. A postdoc which provides training and mentoring but encourages people to do their own thing, and they have a diversity focus. But there's not enough of that. I started the research and training program on poverty and public policy when I came to Michigan. One of the reasons I wanted to have a training program as part of the program, because I thought that was a good way to protect the research, because universities are more likely to cut out research institutes than they are training institutes. But at the time, because of Bill Wilson's book, the Social Science Research Council for the Committee for Research on the Urban Underclass was funded by the Rockefeller Foundation. Jim Gibson and all of these, there's going to be somebody who was there who put the money in and left. Jim Gibson funded the SSRC program. It gave out some postdoctoral fellowships. One of them was a proposal by Melvin Oliver and Jim Johnson, who were then at UCLA. Jim Johnson and Errol Ricketts also provided the original funding for the postdoc at Michigan. Shortly after they left, the Rockefeller Foundation stopped funding, so shortly after Jim left. The Ford Foundation grant, which has funded my program from 1992 to 2014, and the plug was pulled before I left for Russell Sage, was started in collaboration with Jim Johnson and Mel Oliver at UCLA. They were going to do an undergraduate program, which they did while they were there, and I did a postdoc program. And then, again, this notion of the particular people, Ron Mincy and Melvin Oliver both ended up working at the Ford Foundation. And while I think once Bill Diaz had left Ford and died, that was when the Ford support for PPIA ended. The support for my program ended basically when Melvin Oliver left. So one of the difficulties is keeping people engaged, and you can see this peculiar role of Jim Gibson, Ron Mincy. I know Ron Mincy started a pipeline program when he was at Ford to get more economists from historically black colleges into economics. So there's, while Sam has a problem with pipeline programs, in some sense the problem is the supply of funders at foundations who make programs, whether they're supply programs or demand programs, important, I think, is a problem. At Michigan, I've been fortunate to have had 38 postdocs and 6 predocs. A number of the successful predocs and postdocs for my program, Rucker Johnson, obviously, who ran this program, but Derek Hamilton has taught, and Gina Chicheji has taught in the summer economics pipeline program, so there are interactions. Liliana Garces, who was a postdoc with me, is going to be on a panel later this afternoon. So, in some sense, Sam was questioning supply-side programs, but I would argue, yes, we need to focus on the demand side, but the history of the last 30 or so years is not enough supply. Martha clearly said that PPIA used to be a lot bigger than it was, and the answer is if there's some foundation that's willing to step up, it could be a lot bigger today. So while all of these programs, I'm certainly very proud of the opportunities I've had and my colleagues at Michigan to mentor a wide range of postdocs, there just isn't enough focus on this. And if the people here and at APPAM can figure out ways to particularly get other foundations like Robert Wood Johnson interested in the broad public policy issues, whether they're in the environment, crime, health, poverty, or inequality, that would be an important outcome of today's conference. Thanks.